All right, so we are live. I'm excited to have my good friend Brian Manley. What's going on, man?
What's going on, my man? What's going on?
So, for those of you who don't know Brian, so again, Brian and I know each other. We're both virtual guys. We met in a very coincidental way. But I think maybe for those of you who just jump on the call and want to know who you are, so can you tell them like kind of briefly who you are, how long you've been in the business, and kind of your main business model today?
Okay. So, what's interesting? So coming up on March, it'll be 6 years that I've been kind of down this path. Officially, I think, the company name, it would be November this year, it'd be 6 years. But March is kind of when I started in the path, March 24th, 23rd of 2015.
Okay.
The way this interesting story how that happened, I don't know if you want, we can get into that a little later, but that's kind of the start of this. And so my business model now is probably about 80% wholesaling, 70, 80% wholesaling. But I started as a flipper. And so talk about coincidence. So I actually backed into wholesaling accidentally, met some people who introduced me to the idea, and I didn't really know that I'd bought deals from wholesalers before. And then, just kind of looking at the idea of, what moved me into the wholesale model. Really, my first deal was a deal that was got probably about 4 hours drive away from my house in a city I hadn't been to in about 15 years. And I knew it was a good deal. Had no idea how I was going to make it work. Never met the seller, never met the buyer, never saw the house, but I knew there was real good coin in it. So I figured out how to make a deal out of it. And talking about networking, a guy from one of my masterminds helped me figure out how to get it sold. So that's really, kind of back then. Ever since I looked at, the flexibility that I thought, okay, well, if I can do this from 4 hours drive away, I could probably do it from a 4-hour flight away. I locked it up while I was in Puerto Rico. And I was like, okay, this is 4 hours from my house while I'm in Puerto Rico. Make a deal out of it. Let's do this again. And so I've got a partner who deals primarily much more better suited at dealing with contractors and the flip side of things than myself. They make me insane. So it was a hard push. It wasn't hard for me to say, hey, I'd rather be on this side of things than dealing with contractors and all that other stuff, man. And so today we're doing business, and I think so far we've wholesaled in 23 cities, I think. It's more than 20.
Wow.
And we've done projects, flips from extensive flips to wholesales and 13 other ones. So
wow.
We're pretty busy, man.
Got it. So your background before you got into this business, what's your background? Because a lot of people want to know if they can do it, or kind of what's got people into real estate from the get-go, because I think you are from the corporate world, right? Initially.
Yeah. I'm a corporate refugee, man. The funny thing is, the whole time I was in the corporate world, man, I did pretty well, right? But I never felt like I really belonged there. I always felt out of sorts, And so I dreaded when people ask the question, where are you going to see yourself? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, what do I make up? Not here is not the right answer, right? So I never really knew. But so my background, all types of different sales. I was in pharmaceutical sales for close to a decade, and vaccine stuff like that. I was in capital equipment sales and leasing. I was in equipment. I was in packaging. Just a bunch of different types of sales. So a couple of these, I was just a territory guy. The other ones I ran regions or states for some large corporations.
Got it. So overall sales. So
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just before we continue, so for anybody who has questions to Brian, just put it in the chat so we can get to that and answer questions for those of you who have any questions for Brian or for me. All right, so you were in sales, you decided, and then you started to do flipping locally in your own market in Phoenix, right?
Yeah. The first one was a disaster, right? But yeah, started doing flipping, jumped into it real quick, man. Like, hey, we should flip a house, and then 3 days later had a house. Like that kind of decision making. Ready, aim.
So let's talk about the shift, because a lot of people start with, at least for me, they start with wholesaling, and then they feel that they need to evolve, and the next step is to do flipping, because in the food chain of real estate investors, it's, I don't know, it's common knowledge the wholesaler is like at the very bottom, right? You don't have money, you don't have any skills, or you don't need to risk a lot of. So a lot of people get into the wholesaling, which is an issue of itself. So yeah, let's park it aside. That's not, again, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
So why from flipping to move to wholesaling, and one from wholesaling to do virtual?
Got it. So flipping is all anew, right? Like, you know, it's influenced like everybody else, like the flip and flop shows. You know, that's all we knew. So at that time, you didn't have a bunch of podcasts out. You didn't have, I mean, you just didn't, you know, I didn't even know wholesaling was a thing, right? So the very first house, it went like this. I had a friend who I knew back in the heyday of when everybody was flipping, who did pretty well. You know, he played ball at ASU. Guy turned me on to said, hey, look, I can introduce you to somebody who can help you find a house. I knew that he was a flipper. And again, that's all I knew. So when he introduced me to a realtor who said, hey, I can get you a house, I had no idea that realtor until 2 years later got that deal from a wholesaler and just added money on top of it and then sold it. I had no idea. So the first one, it was, hey, we start down this path, and it was just what we knew. So it was, okay, well, let's flip another one. The first one, it turned out beautifully, but there was some nuance that, you know, when you don't have experience that you miss. Didn't go the way you wanted. So it's like, either you can go and get a job, which was not in the cards for me, or you got to do another one of these to be able to pay that money back that you lost. Because it'll take a long time at a job to go and pay back, you know, losses on a flip. So from there, just start getting good at it. But the reason for the change is, and I remember it. I went to an event in San Diego because, you know, I felt like I grew as a person in the business pretty quickly. I wasn't out there. People didn't know. Nobody knew who I was or anything like that. And still a lot of people don't. And I don't make a play of saying, hey, look at me in that. So I didn't have some of the connections that I would have had people been able to see me, right? Or had I raised my hand and said, hey, look. Yeah. And so I went to an event, and guys were, you know, because I just felt like I'd outgrown most of the people who I'd reached out to, and they couldn't really help me anymore. And I remember we had like 5 flips going at once, and we were out of money. And I'd had a relative who was going to loan us some money, who ghosted me, right? Like 3 or 4 days before we had to pay people. Wow. And yeah, and the stress of, you know, that boomer bust when you're in flips, you know, a switch clicked, because we had one property where we thought we'd make about 50K on it. Not a really expensive house. It was like 240 is what we were selling it for. We ended up making 30K on it. The wholesaler made 31K on it. And we did I'm like, wait a minute. And so, you know, I'm like, wait a minute. So here we are 5 months later. The appraiser's pencil whipped us at the end, cost us a few $1,000s. And I thought, wait a minute. So this thing, when we looked at it, okay, it got sold, wholesaled, and re-wholesaled like 3 times before we bought it. Like all within a couple of months period. And so I said, okay, well, here we are. It's a hoarder house. You know, we're going in here. People are getting respiratory because it was the most disgusting house ever. And this other guy who just moved paper made, you know, just as much as we did. So between that and another one that we had, where it was a good flip, where we made like 100K on it, but it took like 9 months to get done. So when you do the math, real simple. Yeah. You know, it was like, well, everybody else has already gotten paid. They've spent their money. They're gone. You know, and at the end, I'm hoping that I've calculated right and I'm going to make the same amount. And it takes me, you know, 9 months to get paid. And at that point, I was just over it. And I said, okay, well, there's got to be a better way. If I'm going to spend $30,000 on an assignment fee, I spend half of that trying to find a deal myself. And so it was the calculation that, do I think for what I spent to find one, I could probably find 2 or 3 others for myself, even if I don't know what I'm doing. And so that was the reason for the switch, is the boom and bust.
Got it. So you moved to start to do you saw wholesaler making just as much as you without all the hassle of working with contractors. That got your attention. So take me now to do it in different market, because I know that you not just do wholesale, you also do flips actually remotely. And I've tried it, and it was a disaster for me. I tried to do like remote flips in Memphis from San Francisco, and I did not succeed, to say the least.
Right. So I'll tell you, we only do those in places where we've got like decent relationships already, or if we can work through somebody else's relationship. So I'm a guy, I'm pretty optimistic about most things, but I'll tell you, contractors, just as there's something culturally in contractors, it's kind of to the point where it's almost comically bad and everybody just kind of accepts it. Like when I say contractor, guys will roll their eyes because we all know, right? Yeah. But you don't really have a lot of, like, it's okay. You've got it is what it is. So I think one of the main things, the reason we did that, we started out doing those in kind of like around the Raleigh area.
Okay.
And reason being, both myself and Rita, who's my partner, used to work for a pharmaceutical company that has a headquarters in Raleigh, North Carolina, and in Philadelphia.
Got it.
So she actually lived in Raleigh prior. So for me, I'd go out there doing trainings and things like that. I had a little bit of familiarity with the area, but she knew the area and she knew a contractor already there. So the genesis for that is there's a contractor, a trusted contractor to start. And then we worked through his contacts and that thing to kind of build that out.
Got it. So, but now I think when I work with other wholesalers or when I coach other people, I tell them to focus on one virtual market, and you are in multiple markets.
Yeah.
So can you explain again, why do you do that, and what's the benefits of this model?
Got you. So first of all, I totally agree with what you're doing. Well, like we telling people, like, start with one. Like that's what we do. You start with one. And the reason being, you're going to have bugs and kinks, like you are. You just are. Like, even if you get excellent coaching. So if you coach somebody and something goes wrong, it's not Haim's fault, right? Things go weird. Even in deals we're still in that, right? Things go wrong. You're dealing with people. People are imperfect. So, but I would say start with one. So the reason moving into other ones was very similar to why we started going out of state in the first place. So when you're in a hyper competitive, market like San Francisco or Phoenix, and the cost of entry is so high, right? The first driver was, okay, do I have money to play with the big boys, right?
Yeah.
The coming from the background and having some reserves helps and hurts you. Like if you got a corporate background, because when you're local guy, if you're young and you're starting out, like your monthly expenses usually aren't that high. Like they're high to you because you don't know any better, right?
Right.
You're like 20 and expenses are high. But when you've got a full house that your household, you've got to do volume plays right off the bat in order to maintain. Correct. So one of the challenges with being in Phoenix was just really trying to get consistent deal flow with everybody. I mean, it's Guru Capital. Open Door or OfferPad, one of those is like a mile and a half from my house. Zillow bought their first home ever for offers a mile from here. So It's great. Yeah, it's great. I'm like in the middle, like it's ground zero. Like, you remember the old movies where the two, the hero and the villain are pointing the gun at each other? Like, I'm in the middle, right?
Okay.
So it was, well, where can I go where my money goes a little bit further? It's just the cost of entry, the price points, because the way I market it, initially started with pay-per-click. It was easier for me to just move that to another area. And so the main reason was, hey, it's cheaper to do it here.
Got it.
Then as that started to grow, and it started to be an area that more and more people are paying attention to, you started moving to the outskirts, right? Kind of like, an animal in nature. It runs out of food and then it travels a little further. And then from there, once you do something in the outskirts, you go, okay, well, let me leapfrog to another one. Let me leapfrog to another one. But it was start and get proof of concept in one. And then it's almost like business in a box. And I go, okay, I can take this with about 80% certainty, 80% of what I'm doing will work. Move it to another market. And then there's that last 20% or so that there's going to be the variation where you just have to learn weird quirks about that market. But it was the first is just let me get it down first. And how do you do this? And then I can do it again. Are you frozen? Is that me?
Got it. And wholesale for you is just one strategy in your toolbox, right? Because I know that sometimes you take properties down. You have, again, private money lenders, and sometimes you wholesale, sometimes you fix it up. So what's your strategy? Again, how do you look into a deal when you analyze it to decide what's your exit strategies?
So, dude, hi, man. I'm ambitiously lazy, man. So
Team lazy. Team lazy.
Ambitiously lazy. So part of what goes into what I'm going to do with the deal is how much work is involved, right?
Okay.
If it's a lot of work and a long time to get a good pop, or it's a little bit of work and I can get out real quick, I'm probably taking that strategy, the little bit of work and get out real quick, right? Then, from there, it's, if it's a really, really big flip, like we've got our last big flip that was supposed to close today, actually, and it got moved to next week. We've been trying to get rid of this house forever. That'll be, the really big ones. It's easy. We know we're going to wholesale those. We're going to wholesale them or wholesale them. We just don't want the big jobs remotely anymore. And then if it just needs a little bit of work, sometimes you get skinny deals that, if you wholesale them, you might make like $3,000. And we don't do deals for our bare minimum is like $5,000. And my acquisition guys, they don't get counted towards their a deal less than $5,000 doesn't get counted towards the monthly quota. Like their target aim is 12.5 in a wholesale deal.
Got it.
They'll still get paid for the little ones, but like it just doesn't count towards your number that you're supposed to hit. And so what we'll do is sometimes we'll get, or maybe the assignment fee might be like $3,000. And if you put like a little bit of, if you buy it and you hang on to it for a couple of weeks, you can turn that into 12 or 15. We'll wholesale those usually because they're small deals. And we don't mind giving away some equity, as giving away some equity in those and things like that, because, it's infinite return, and it only makes sense to buy those and resell them. And some properties, it's dictated by the property. Like some of them, there's not enough in it to wholesale, and it doesn't need a full flip. But if you buy it and put it on MLS, then you can get a lot more than what you could if you were to try to wholesale it to another professional. So that kind of dictates what we do.
Got it. So let's shift more, because you mentioned your team members. So how's your team looking today? And do you have your team also virtual, or do you go to one office and all working from the same place?
Yeah, my team's fat and ugly. That's how they look. I'm kidding. No, my team. So my team consists right now. So we've got myself, who operates kind of like, steering the ship. My partner, who runs kind of like the daily operation that keeps me sane when I want to try all the ideas that may or may not work. We've got 3 acquisitions. Yeah,
it's Rita.
Yeah, it's Rita.
Super
we've got,
cool
guy. Yeah, and dots the I's and crosses the T's for the kind of stuff that I go, I'll get to that. So keeps me sane. That's been my MO all through sales. It's like, let me do this other stuff. 3 acquisitions. We brought somebody new on yesterday who's lead gen agent. So we've got 3 of those. And they do some cold calling as well as some SMS. We've got another guy who does some SMS on a different platform. So we use 2 different platforms. Then we've got an executive assistant and a lead manager. So 5, and then we've got an agent who's kind of like an extension of us, who works very, very closely with us. So 5 of us are stateside, 6 are stateside. Everybody else is offshore.
Got it. So the stateside, they also live in different states, or you're all in Phoenix?
One does, and the other ones live in Phoenix. And I actually just met one that lives in Phoenix. I met him. I think he'd been working here like 2.5 months before I met him, because even he's virtual, even though we're both in Phoenix. So everything's virtual. Even the Phoenix guys are virtual. So
that's awesome.
We're not centralized, no office, no going in. Everything is, you can work from wherever you want to. If they want to go to Mexico and work, I don't care. I mean, I want the freedom of movement for them as well, as long as they can do what they got to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about it, because I know that you came back from Mexico for the 2nd time this month. Good for you, man. I'm jealous because we can't travel here from Israel because of the lockdown and the restrictions. So tell us about the lifestyle, how you were able to kind of run a big team. I think I just counted like 9 or 10 people on your team. 11 people. You're doing volume. So I'm sure you're busy, but you still are able to travel and live the lifestyle that you want. So tell about that, this aspect of your business and how important it is to you.
So I had a little bit of a head start in this, right? Because when I was in corporate America and outside sales, one of those jobs was decentralized. So for about 9 years, I had a home office, right? And I would go and do sales calls and all that kind of stuff and travel all over the place, but I didn't have a central office that I needed to go to. So I had a little bit of a head start, and I got really, really spoiled. I took a job after that one where I had an office, and I knew about how an animal gets trapped in nature and it chooses to lay off to get away. Like that's how I was in that job. And I had to go. And every Monday, I mean, I just dreaded the idea, Sunday even, of going back to the office every day. And I just realized I just wasn't that kind of guy. And so from there, after that, each subsequent sales job, even if I had an office, there was a lot of freedom of movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's what I knew. It's what I was comfortable in. It's what I wanted. And so I took a lot of what I experienced in that and tried to bring, the good from the corporate experience over and then leave the bad out. And so I think part of that is I kind of had a template. The other part of it too, and maybe it's the right way to think, maybe it's not. I always assume that people who would want to work in this kind of business, because we kind of got a startup culture, I always assumed that would be important to them too, to be able to have some freedom of movement. And maybe mistakenly, because a lot of people, that's all they know is to go to an office and they're fine. They like it and they prefer it. Right. So one of the things that we do here and that I've always done is heavily leverage technology. So, even when we were, say, for example, if we're doing, and we do a lot of technology hacks, right? So perfect example. And this is kind of a long answer to get in that because I just want to frame. So say, for example, like if we're doing remote flips or remote flip, we have a series of alarms that we rotate around through properties, or sometimes we just treat them as disposable, right? Okay. They're simply safe. You put them in, you can move from property to property or leave them there. But the beautiful thing about them is we don't just use them as alarms to protect our properties. We use them as time clocks. Okay. So each contractor that goes in has its own code. And so it'd be fascinating. It's amazing how much more quickly things get done when guys log in and they know when they're logging in, going into the flip, right? It's kind of a hack where they're not meant to be that, but we thought, hey, how do we use this? The other thing is, supplies and all that stuff. A lot of stuff, even when we're doing flips locally, at volume, we didn't deliver things. We weren't going to stores. We just Amazoned it. We just leveraged somebody else's infrastructure and just delivered straight to the site. So similarly, in our business here, like if I showed you my screen on my phone, you don't judge me, but it looks insane because like if you can see all the different apps and stuff like that. So this up here at the top, there was those are leads. There was 18 of those this morning. I get notifications, but all of these are different app bundles, and so I run 80% of what I do from my phone. So there's an app for everything. A lot of notifications, a lot of things to automate follow-ups. So because I don't have the bandwidth, the capacity to remember everything, and so I just really heavily leverage technology. And that's the main thing. It's if there's an idea you have, somebody's smarter than you to build a tool to do it.
Got it. I love it. So technology also allow you to run it remotely and even internationally. If you choose to go to Mexico, you can still up to date. You can see what's going on in your business. You can manage, and everybody logging into the same kind of platform, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, I could be in Israel and do it. I mean, it doesn't matter where I am. In fact, it doesn't even matter where anybody else is. I mean, you quite literally now, there's so much that's available in the new tech and public records and some of the platforms that give you data. You're really independent. It's location independent right now. And, for a long time, I read this book, The 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss book years and years ago. And I couldn't figure out what kind of business. See, there you go. I couldn't figure out what kind of business I could start that would let me do that. Right. I like all the stuff that I did, like for example, if my background, was in pharmaceuticals, it's not like you can go out and just create a compound that makes it to the market. It's in pharmaceutical, right? It's not a transferable skill set. Maybe the sales side of it, but so I struggled to figure out, well, how do I apply this to myself? And so once I stumbled across the wholesaling aspect of this business, I thought, well, I'm never even meeting these guys. They're just selling me these deals. Well, okay. And then when I backed into the one that was in Lake Havasu, I said, well, this is it. And then so I'd already had the seed planted from that. And then just decided, okay, I know there are tools because this guy's done this before. And he's kind of given a roadmap to how to do it. And that was really, in a lot of ways, that was the outline.
I love it.
That book was the start of it.
Yeah. So let's shift gears because talk about networking. We chat about it a little bit, and I know that we are here today just because I decided to fly to Phoenix to do the interview with Mr. Trang, with Steve Trang,
Yeah.
and the guys from Alabama were there, and they called you, and we were just chatting, and the next thing you know, again, I flew back to Phoenix, and then we met, and then we started to do deals together. So let's talk about it. What you feel about networking and how important it is to your business and to you personally to grow.
Dude, let me tell you, so this is kind of maybe an unorthodox answer, right? But I'll tell you that for me, the primary thing with the networking is not the resources, right? For me, it's the saving of time to know who's who, right? Because like you didn't know anything about me when we met, right? And
Correct.
I'd seen stuff from you online, but I didn't know anything about you. But when there's introductions from other people, and it kind of counts as a vetting, right? So I was ready. I had an old sales manager say this, before you went in bed with somebody, but I was like, okay, I didn't have a lot of reservation about hopping in bed together, based on how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because I met Adam and Brent at an event. I met Adam, Brent, and Matt way back, like 3 years before they had platforms and all that stuff, things they were doing. And then it turns out I ran into Brent at a mastermind after meeting him at this other event. And that was kind of where the relationship started. So then fast forward, they're just here. I met Steve. I went to one of his events, and he was super cool when he met me. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know he had any of the stuff going on. He was just a real, genuine guy. And so we started building a relationship. I had no idea these guys are building any of this other stuff. We just connected and vibed. So when I reconnected with Adam and Brent, and they said, hey, we're going out and grab lunch. And then you came, and I was like, okay, well, you automatically had a level of credibility with me just based on that. And I think that's the coolest thing, because how long would it have taken for, to get to know each other? Because again, we're virtual. We don't even meet with our own people. So let alone going out and meet together. Yeah. So it's like, when would I have met you, So I saw some videos and I was like, oh, okay. And then it was just happenstance. So it was really cool, man, when you came back in town. And again, just conversations. And then Alex hit me up after you talked to him, and you guys were out in Phoenix again. And we went and had a couple of, had a good time out and had lunch again. And I was like, I dig it. I just got a real good sense of it. But I think that's really, really important, because there's a lot of incentive right now to make up a lot of stuff right now for folks. There's a lot of incentive, and it's real easy to do with all the different tools. And so for me, the networking, man, is, for one, what's good is I feel like you can also have a support network built out of that. Like, I'm not a guy that's got to walk around and pretend everything's perfect, right? Sometimes.
Let's talk about it. I want to go back, because I think you meet great people because it's an outcome of you putting yourselves in the right environments, I think.
True. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so let's talk about it, because a lot of people feel that they just the people that can help them take whatever their journey they are on to the next level without sometimes paying to be in rooms when other players are playing. I paid to be in a mastermind. I know you paid to be in a mastermind. You went to see an event when Brent was, which is a night that he paid to be there. Same with Steve Trang. So what do you think about that? Just making an intentional effort to put yourself in the right rooms.
So it's interesting, right? Before I did it, I thought, man, it's super corny. I'm not doing that, right? Like, I'm just being honest with you, right? So before I did it, because I just didn't understand, right? I felt like, here's the thing. So if you feel like you're a person that's offering value, you feel like other people can benefit from getting to know you too. Only thing is that you don't know that there are different rungs and levels, and you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So once you get in the rooms, man, for me, I think the biggest thing was it was a level set, right? You get in the rooms and you see, okay, well, what's possible? I don't know that I'm a wholesaler if I don't get in one of those rooms, right? I don't know that I'm virtual if I don't get in one of those rooms. I highly doubt it, right? Mm-hmm. I think the thing is too that you have access to not only the people, but a lot of times if there's relationships, there's resources, and I just think it makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that if you're a person who's been successful in other endeavors in other parts of life, I think it's real easy to fall into, hey, I can figure this out too, because I did it. And I thought, well, I'll just figure this out. I don't need it. You don't realize that people just think differently than you do. Yeah. And so you can look at somebody, who has nothing in common with you other than they're excelling in their business. And they got their completely different, to completely different roadmap to get there. And some things that they experience along the way are things you would never conceive of yourself. So it's not like you couldn't get there on your own. But, my idea when I start thinking about it is, what if I can get to wherever I want to get in a year versus 5 years? And then those 5 years are going to be littered with trial and error, wasted spend. I'm going to pay money anyway, right?
Right.
Like, that's the thing, right? Like, you're going to pay it anyway, and then might cost you more. It might put you out of business. So now I'm a huge proponent of, if you got to pay to be in the room, pay to be in the room. I just didn't understand it initially, I think is what my initial reservations were rooted in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us alpha guys, they think they're smarter than everybody else, right? We can figure it out, as you said. I need to pay somebody else 15 grand to tell me what to do. There's no way.
Right. Hey, I'm glad you said that, man. I'm glad you said that, because I wasn't going to say it, but that's true too, right?
Yeah. So I think, again, if it can save you time, I know for a fact, just being in the same room with people that are 5 or 6 or 7 steps ahead of me, and just having access to them to ask questions, that was worth it. That's what worth it, 100%. 100%.
This. Did you find, were you like surprised that there were even 5, 6, and 7 steps to be ahead of you? Because my eyes got opened. I didn't even realize some of the things that people were doing in this space. Like, I had no idea that, like, I couldn't place a value on it because I didn't know those things were there. Right? Like, when you mentioned somebody's 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of you, I knew that there was maybe 1 or 2 additional steps, but I didn't even know that there were the other ones. So it was hard for me to place a value on that early on.
And like, again, the tips that we share in this type of setup, like you mentioned, the tip about the alarm system that you place. This is just a small nuggets, but people will share with you the lists. Just if somebody take this nugget and implement it, they can open a new market and start running flips from the phone, right? Just so I think it's in the value that you get in these setups. It's amazing. Listen, man. So we are in the over 30-minute mark. So how can people reach out to you or follow you? Again, I love your posts because, again, it's very thought-provoking. Sometimes you don't have any filter. You said what's on your mind, which I appreciate that. Sometimes people, I'm sure, don't agree with everything you said, but that's the beauty of social media. Everybody have their own opinion. So how can people follow you and learn about you?
So, dude, I'm just now, check this out. People are going to laugh at me. So I'm just now starting to use Instagram, right? Like, I've made posts over the years. It's been like over the 6 years, it's maybe like 100 posts or something like that, right? I'm just now starting to use that. I use Facebook a lot. So it's just my name, Brian Manley. I think it's a laptop REI guy on Instagram, but I think I need somebody to help me come up with a cool name, right? But that's it right now. So I am actually, man, it's interesting, man. I'm working on some sort of templating, it's some coaching. For me, so up to this point, I just wanted to make sure that I was really, really buttoned down in my business before going out, and 1, diverting attention to helping other people. And 2, you just don't want to feel like you're being disingenuous. Like, hey, I do this works day in, day out. I can tell people that. So shortly, there'll be an opportunity for people to reach out through some of the coaching and things that I offer. But right now, Facebook and Instagram are perfect. I check messages on Facebook more readily. Instagram, the notifications are all weird to me, so I'm still getting up there. That's how you get me. And then I'm on Clubhouse. Are you on there yet?
I'm not on there. I don't think the line works for me from Israel. So I'm still trying to get on it. But do you like it?
Yeah, I do, man. You know what? The crazy thing is like you literally get to sit there and have conversations with people you'd never be in the same room at. So kind of like where the happenstance of us ending up together, it's very similar where other people who've kind of vetted other people will get together and they have this whole stage project, and then you'll be, you're sitting right next. So the other day, it looks like, I'll send you a screenshot. It looks like me and Grant Cardone are on stage. He doesn't know me. I met him like one time, but we're on the same stage, like, and then our little icons, our emojis are right next to each other, or our pictures. And you can go in there and really, really just get some real valuable nuggets, man. You can hear in real time whether people know what they're talking about or not. Versus it's real easy to manufacture. You can curate, when it's written out, I don't like how that sounds. Edit. It's live, man. It's really cool. And I know they just opened up Japan. So maybe that's what they're doing, is they're just doing country by country. Got it. You have an iPhone?
Yes, I do.
I'll save an invite for you. I've got a few. I'll save an invite for you when you come on there, man. I think you do really well on there too, man.
Sounds good, man. So listen, thank you very much for being on here. I'm sure people got some value. It's all about wholesaling, about the lifestyle, about networking with the right people. So I appreciate you and appreciate you spending the time with us here.
Definitely, brother, man. And I got to say this last thing. I'm so jealous that you took that name, Virtual Wholesaling Guy. I was going to use it, and I was like, who the hell is this? That's how I first discovered you. I was like, you had the name already. I was like, what the hell?
I have a good, because you gave me a good word. Borders don't matter. That's a good way for you.
Yeah. I like it.
I'm going to buy the domain in 2 minutes and flip it to you.
Cool, right? Cool, man. It's good talking to you, man.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
See you later. All right. Bye.